Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up with James Withall today, CEO at Rupert Resources, Canadian company exploring for gold in Finland. They raised some money recently and we talk about where they're going to be allocating their time, money and effort. Ikari has been spitting out some high-grade results with good intervals. We look forward to a resource coming out perhaps later this year and when they're going to be able to produce a PEA. We talk also about the wider prospectivity of the land package that they've got there and doing business in Finland. In fact, if you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation, company, and James, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com. And of course, if you want to see precisely what we talked about today, do take a look in the description below. James, how are you, sir?
Good, thanks, Matt. It's good to see you.
Well, good to have you back. You were with us end of November. Been a busy time. But first of all, how are you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've been good. It's been, I don't know, it's been an incredibly busy start to the year. I still start to the year. I guess we're halfway through the year. So that tells you an awful lot going on. The project's been flying along and just, the team have been probably our busiest year ever for Rupert Resources, no doubt about that in terms of work. And, there's good reasons for that. But finally actually getting towards the summer in Finland. So the guys will take a short break before they really get back into it after the midsummer break that they have in Finland. And then it'll be, I'm sure the second half of the year will be just as busy. So. Yeah.
Is that by the way? So how does it work with the weather over there in terms of like they'll take a break before summer? I mean, what's going on?
So traditionally, the holiday season in Finland is around midsummer. So everyone they celebrate midsummer because you got the long night, especially up there because you got the whole sunlight for 24 hours in the day. So that's when they tend to in northern Finland or the northern Finnish will take their holiday season. And so they might take 2 or 3 weeks, or some of them might take 4 weeks holiday, and that's their main chance to catch up with family and friends. So it's quite, in some ways, it works for us because then you sort of get everyone off at the same time, and then everyone commits to that, and then everyone's back working full time again after that, rather than drips and drabs.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Well, I tell you what, given we haven't spoken since the end of November, can you give us that 1 minute overview of the projects? And then I'll pick it up from there with some questions.
Yeah, so just a reminder, obviously we're in northern Finland, the Paatavaara project. We have this permitted mine and mill at the Paatavaara mine, which was bought back in 2016. And then we've been all about making significant new discoveries or looking for this potential multi-million ounce discovery outside of the Paatavaara mine. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years. And that's all come together with this Ikari discovery that has obviously been attracting a lot of attention from the market. So that's only just over a year old. We had our first anniversary of the first drill hole on March the 31st of this year. So that's where we're at now, and we continue to demonstrate the potential for that. And there'll be a maiden resource coming out on that in August, September time, but hopefully in August of this year. So quite soon.
So you're up around 900 million Canadian dollars. You're up there, aren't you? For a junior. And all you've been doing is drill.
Yeah.
Is there any more leverage left in this story? Should people still be interested in you?
Look, I think it's a great question, Matt, and it's a question that people are continually sort of asking themselves. We just did a financing that was very well subscribed at $5.30 a share. It was supported not only on the private side by our current investors, but also seemingly had large institutional demand for the stock as well. So it was certainly not a hard book to fill. And so again, why are people continuing to support it or taking new positions here? I think for me it's about this whole point that we've been very, very focused on finding an exceptional discovery or something that is rare in this industry. There's looking for something that is a top tier asset in the sector, and that was the whole aim that we went out to. And hopefully, we believe that this Ikari discovery is demonstrating all the elements to fall into that. But also, I think what's really important, Matt, is that this is the first discovery of its kind in Finland, and when we put the maiden resource out, that will put the region on the map ultimately, but also for this potential and scale of deposits, but also shows that geological potential. And we still have, we have 400, nearly 500 square kilometers of ground these days. along this main belt. And, there's still the potential for more, and the guys are out there today exploring new targets all the time. So there's a lot of potential still to come from it.
Okay, so the name of the game for you is to make discoveries. Okay, you've got a large land package there, so you've made one discovery, and I think I often remind people, having projects and having targets and having anomalies doesn't really pay the bills. You've got to find discoveries, and not many people do. So you've made one. It's the idea to kind of focus on that with the money that you've got now, or have you also got exploration programs going on out there?
Yeah, so the funding we raised just now, including with the funding that we had previously, and also remember that we have some warrants that are well in the money from Agnico as well. So the company's very well funded if you put all that together for the next couple of years, to continue both demonstrating the economic potential of this Ikkari discovery. We have already discovered 5 other things in the run up to finding Ikkari. There was 5 other discoveries there anyway, and a number of those are continuing to be, have drilling done on them and pushing them to the next stage and demonstrating the size of those. So you'll see us, do the economic evaluations of Ikkari, but we still haven't shown the extents of that. I mean, this is really, I think what's important. People are, we'll put a maiden resource out, but it's really an interim resource because it was just to get, a marker in the sand to say this is how good it is, and then we'll still have put in probably a few thousand meters worth of drilling beyond that resource envelope by the time we do that resource that comes out. So I think there's plenty more to come on that side.
So why did you put out the interim resource? Because I know you just said it's a marker in the sand, but for other people would take the view of, do you know what, keep drilling until you find the extent of the ore body and then do it. So obviously different people can have different ways of approaching it. Why did you feel the need to put something out?
Yeah, I guess all the way through, I think the key thing for me is that shareholders or people are giving you high risk capital. So here to do this kind of work, and the aim is you have to spend it relatively aggressively. And you ask me, how do you do, obviously other people haven't made discoveries and that might own Pakistan, but what we've demonstrated or what this business model was to spend exploration money, in a quite aggressive fashion, as though we were, the sort of budget of a major producing company, looking to replace assets of quality. So that's the approach we've had. So really, I think, we owe it to our shareholders for a start, to actually, as soon as possible, demonstrate, the potential value we have created or that we've discovered. I think that's important. And you've got to be accountable as a company. You can't just carry on drilling for the sake of it, and hoping that you might add marginally to the resource. As soon as I think it's important, as soon as you have something of scale, if you're looking for things of scale, let's make sure you do put that marker in the sand. And then there's some accountability then as you then take it forward. And in reality, time is what's the biggest sort of destroyer of value in exploration. It's the time it takes, isn't it? It takes so long potentially to do it. We've found Ikkari a year ago. If we can get the first resource out within just over a year, that allows us to start working on all the economics side of things, all the metallurgy, all the other things that de-risk their assets a lot quicker. But if we waited another year or so, it's another year away from potential cash flow from the asset, and which is what the market's valuing. Ultimately, they're looking at returns in the future, aren't they? That's what they're valuing on. But if you keep on pushing that out, how do you need to bring that closer to the investor, not further away.
But you're coming at it like a fund manager, which you used to be, and a money guy. So you're using a different set of metrics possibly to the average retail investor or family office. So how are you measuring yourself?
Well, I guess this is, in terms of ourselves, our KPI, our sort of long-term KPI, so of over 3 years, is to demonstrate a return on shareholders' equity. So we have like a hurdle that we have to do. So every time we raise money, and the biggest risk, as I see as a CEO, is actually raising a lot of money, because for me to actually get my remuneration or any bonuses, it's about us, and you've got to justify that in a company that's not generating cash flow, why should it? You've really got to set those markers high. Is for us to, we're looking to aim to, generate 4 or 5 or more times return on that shareholders' capital that gets raised every time. So the $48 million that we just raised, we've got to make sure that, ideally your benchmark is sort of $250 million worth of market capitalization at a minimum that you want to do that. I mean, this is, we're not a revenue creating company. We're not doing that right now. So you've got to somehow demonstrate that value in another way.
Right. Because I think it's always quite interesting when the management team CEO look at their remuneration and how that affects their decision making. It's not always for the positive. So the metrics you're bringing, and as an ex-markets guy, you'd have analysed a lot of that. But in this instance, can you be a bit more specific about how your decision making is in the interest of shareholders? Is are the right ways to go about measuring success? Because if I'm looking in as an investor, I'm looking at the share price. It's real simple for me, but for you, there's a process.
Yeah, it is a process, and I think what's really interesting, a lot of people will say, oh, it's X many ounces. You've discovered X many ounces, and you're like, okay, that's great, but you can discover a lot of ounces in this business, and we have a 75% hit rate on all our exploration drilling grassroots. So we find ounces all the time, but all ounces aren't created equally. So you've got to put some qualifier on those ounces. And so, you could, plenty of companies might be sitting on 10 million ounces, but they might only get valued at maybe $5 or $6 an ounce for those ounces, because really those ounces might only be economic if the gold price goes up by X and inflation doesn't increase and you don't have it. So you get a margin spread. But at the moment, they probably don't make money. They're not economic today. So I guess it's a long answer, but really, our point, that sort of brings you back to, why are we doing the resource? Why are we going to get some economics out there? Is because we want to demonstrate that the ounces we're finding are like it says on the tin. We said we were looking for, very high returning ounces in the first place, large deposits, which, are in the top tier. So, get on and demonstrate it. So are these, lowest cost quartile ounces? Should the market give you a lot higher valuation on each of those ounces you've discovered? And it makes those ounces for the people that are just looking at ounces, it makes them a lot more meaningful, allows them to attach a value to each of those ounces, which is important. Otherwise, it's that whole analogy. You could it might be for some people, why not just buy some gold bars instead? All we're doing is finding gold in the ground, but those gold bars are real and there. But we're trying to demonstrate, gold with a return, and that's what it. That's what it is.
It's interesting the way that different companies come at it, because there's some froth in the market. I think in North America we're seeing a lot of excitement around Newfoundland. It's a lot of money being thrown at that. And, again, we've seen some good companies, not so good companies, and the way that they're approaching their program. For instance, they are not rushing to putting out a resource. And it is harder for people like me, Joe Public, to actually understand the value of those ounces in the ground. So that's why I'm trying to understand, again, what's going on in your head in terms of trying to say to the market, I'll give you the information that you need. You will be able to work this out. And, does that answer the question of, is there much more leverage left in this company?
Yeah, and I think the answer is, if we can demonstrate that the potential of those ounces in the future and the sort of returns on them, I think that will begin for people to understand that there is more leverage in the company ultimately. And I think, that's, so you live and die by those potential returns that you're generating. But also, it's very interesting. You look at my team on site, we've got 6 known discoveries in Area 1 alone. And so we're continuously re-ranking those, and we're looking at new opportunities and greenfield exploration even all the time today. So how much cash should we allocate to those versus bringing Hickory up the curve, and just continue looking at that cash allocation strategy in the company. So it's and those guys, now they've seen in Hickory that potential, it gives them a good benchmark of what they've got to find to demonstrate other potential. So and how to look at it. And I'd say it's not just me that thinks like that. It's now my entire geology team that really thinks like that. The exploration team thinks like that, which I think is, well, I don't know if it's unique, but it's what I've been trying to encourage them to do. And so if every time they put another drill hole down now, they can, look at it straight away and think, oh yeah, this could be the potential for, this sort of scale. And that's why we're continuing to do generative exploration, because that's really where you make the transformative value changes in these companies as well.
Right. Obviously, leverage to gold. Clearly, you're a gold company, but it's a gold exploration company. We've seen a sort of bump in your share price recently. Is that just an alignment with what's happening with the gold price, or was it people feeling a little bit more comfortable about the fact you've been able to raise a big chunk of capital?
Yeah, I guess we spoke in November, so the shares did very well going into Christmas, into the year end, and then come into January. It just seemed to take a bit of a slide back down. I think we put out a couple of releases which maybe weren't quite as good as the others. They were still exceptional releases, like 100 meter plus or intercepts with consistent grades. So they were still, as far as we were concerned, very good releases. But you did have a bit of and it came back with the gold price maybe, and probably people thought, they maybe lost a bit of momentum. But then I guess what we've done is just continue since then. I guess end of March, April, we just put out very consistent results from the project. And trying to get people to really just de-risk the potential of the asset.
Yeah, just remind people of some of the numbers here, because you say the consistency and the widths seem to be there, and the grades are good. I guess are people expecting more of the same from Ikkari? Again, what to your point is, do you allocate more capital to some of these other discoveries? Because you're talking about zone one. In the first zone, you've got a big land package, so.
Yeah.
How are you going to play it?
So it's with Area 1, which contains Ikkari and these 5 other discoveries, it is about 10% of the land package, so relatively small. Obviously, we're going back to those early conversations. How did we filtered down the land package to potentially the highest potential part of it in the first place? So that's why we focused there. But now, from what we've learned over the last two years exploring there, allows us to think, identify where else might be potential. So it's how are we going to play it? I think it's deposits like Ikkari. What's interesting about them is that you don't need to drill a huge amount of holes in them to bring them up the confidence level, because it's so consistent. You had these widths, like I think that last press release, extreme 188 meters at 4.1 grams. Just extreme, like long intervals. So when you're drilling something like that, you don't need to drill it on 10 meter centers. You can drill it on 30 or 40 meter centers, and we'll have that work on that initial sort of, I think 650 meters to strike and 300 or 400 meters to depth, and the similar sort of width done by towards the end of the year, down to effectively so it can be in its indicator category, a relatively high level of confidence, because it's so consistent. It won't take a lot of drill meters, but that allows us to free up other drill meters to go to continue doing looking for extensions to Ikkari and doing that. But we don't need to, what's important is that we don't need to throw a huge amount of drill rigs and a huge amount of meters at this project. If you're looking for these style of deposits we're looking for, they're not that drill intensive. They're not a skinny vein that it takes lots and lots of holes just to get some confidence in. So it's about, it goes back to that point. We continuously, people ask, what's your budget for next year? I think out of the back of this, finance we've just done, we've got sufficient funds for, another year of 70,000 meters of drilling, for sure. But it's about what you do with that drilling ultimately. Maybe half of that goes to Ikkari, but the rest of it, we will be continuing to look for the potential next Ikkari.
Yeah, okay. But if Ikkari, it's going to case of at what point are you going to close off Ikkari and park it up? What's good enough for the market to go, what, we understand that's fine. Please move on and tell us that there's more. You're talking about Area 1 being 10% of the land package. It's like, do you really get aggressive and do some far out type exploration, or is it just cautious, stepping up the land package?
There's two bits to that. We have a new package of ground called Yesio, which will be granted this summer, hopefully, and that's an Area 1, a piece of ground that's very similar to Area 1 geologically. So that's about to start its grassroots first stage of exploration, just like we found Ickery, one base of till rig and one drill rig coming along behind it. So that'll start this winter. That's a new area. And then you've got this whole, we filled in this sort of, these resource triangles or prospectivity triangles. If you look at our presentations, there's a whole, I think we have 27 odd targets these days. But it's just like fund management. You've got a portfolio of opportunities, and we continually assess them probably on a bi-weekly, monthly basis about where we should, allocate the capital to them for that potential. But I think, you mentioned about when do you stop Ickery, that presumes that it has to stop, if you see what I mean. Why would you necessarily stop it and park it? I think, we'll continue to do all the economic evaluation studies and do it, but at the same time, it's not really a stop and park process. You just continue allocating, incremental amounts to that, to do smaller step outs at Ickery maybe, but whilst you carry on doing the new gen exploration at the same time. It's people often ask me this question, and it's a dynamic process. That's the thing, and it's quite hard to explain to investors. And the best way I can explain to it is really by, if they're managing a portfolio of stocks that they own, just think about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. They're continuing to reallocate. But I guess that's what we're doing when we continue to look at these opportunities. But most importantly, we're not, we're always looking for the highest return on each of that dollar invested for us. And so, I think it's why it's hard. I'm not giving you a very definitive answer about what we're doing with the money, because I think we plan to continuing doing what we've been doing at Rupert Resources for the last 4 years, but also in a responsible manner, that we're also de-risking the things that we have found. So which really gives that underpin to value. And so as we demonstrate, how good Ickery is and how, maybe some of the satellites to it, you've got that as a backstop to value and potential. We want to demonstrate that it should be worth more than the current valuation of the company is today. But also you've got this other part of the business continuing to push on with finding the next Ickery and doing, risk managed investing in the rest of the land package.
The economics out there are, or rather the conversations around the economies out there are well, you can argue it from both sides. As a ex-fund manager, you're looking at what the gold price is doing now, what it could do in the future. And again, that must affect your decision making in terms of how you approach these projects too, because you touched upon the fact that maybe you needed a flag in the sand to show people what Ickery is now. Do you have a view that, well, maybe it should try and get into production, get some cash flowing, and then you build the company out? Or do you just kind of take this company to a certain point of development and then hand it over to someone? I mean, how does one play a finished gold exploration story, given there's very few peers?
I think the path to production, we will expedite the path to production as much as possible, but that's what you should be. You're in the resources business. Whilst we're an exploration company, I guess we shouldn't be pigeonholed as just an exploration company. We are a resources company, so we will continue to move that asset forward as fast as possible, as would anyone else. Whether same as I described our exploration business, as described it, we're doing the sort of exploration you'd see in a very large company looking to replace one of its cornerstone assets. That's what we do. So what do? They keep on moving that forward down the process. So we will carry on having that approach to de-risking the asset and bringing it forward. I guess I often, what's our business model? It's a bit like, the same as those business units in those new business and business development and those, but without any bureaucracy, because there's only 5 people, in the senior management team. So we can move things super quick, and we don't have all the big company bureaucracy to deal with. So we will carry on doing that and moving it towards that. As said, that's the only way to them. That's people are going to value on future cash flows. And that's what we do with the business, taking it forward. Whereas, and all those companies, as you recognize, a big company, they're continually doing exploration. They're all now talking about doing more exploration. So we're doing exploration at the same time as well. So, I think if we do our job incredibly well, Matt, and continue to demonstrate, really high quality assets that you mentioned the gold price. Well, I'm not ambivalent to the gold price. It's nice to have a really high gold price. But at the same time, we're not looking for assets that are marginal. We're looking for assets that can make money, whatever the gold price or whatever the weather, effectively, I call it. So it costs in the lowest cost quartile. And that's so that we're not building a business which is gold price dependent. You will have leverage to the gold price because it's the commodity you're producing, but not because you don't have margins when the gold price is low.
We still get a lot of questions about the ability to do business in Finland. You're a Canadian company run by a British team in Finland, and people still don't quite understand it. I mean, what are the benefits of working in Finland? What would you compare it to?
I guess you can compare it really to anywhere. You could be in Northern Ontario for that matter. I mean, in Canada, we're sitting there plugged into hydropower, 100% renewable hydropower at our projects. It's the weather is similar to, I guess, Northern Ontario. Warm summers. It was 25 degrees there last week when the guys are there on site. So, it's not, we're not in a permafrost area of the world or anything like that. Don't have to deal with any of those issues. Yes, it's a bit cold in the winter, but it is in Northern Ontario. So, but also what I find good about Finland is just a very pragmatic place to work. There's, you have to go through the process to get all your permits and go through that process. But, the people you're dealing with are pragmatic people. You can have a proper conversation with them as long as you're open and honest with them about what you're doing. We're not working it's a very low risk environment to be working in, which allows us probably to have a leaner corporate vehicle, to be honest. Everyone is really in Finland. That's it. And we concentrated. And I guess maybe that's been that's really been our saving grace of the last couple of years through this whole COVID crisis, because everyone is there. I haven't needed to go to Finland. And our, local management team, and most of the crew are Finnish, and they all live locally with their young families and get on with it. It's just like you would if you're in Northern Ontario working in one of those locations.
Right. But I'm thinking more about, infrastructure, all the kind of energy costs, all of that kind of stuff. And I guess, even, quite frankly, I think people sort of think of Finland as, reindeer and trees, but, any environmentalist issues, as we've seen, in places like Canada.
Well, I think so, and I think you'll face that everywhere in the world. I don't think you could, and I think if you're again just a very proactive approach, we are working. We don't have any what we call Natura 2000 protected areas, which you do have in Europe. We actively never pick up ground that has that underlying it, because we just don't believe that's certainly for a company of our scale, the permitting timeframes and everything would make that too hard. So look, we just we go about our business in the best possible way. It has the power costs are incredibly low in this part of the world. You're talking maybe 5 euro cents a kilowatt hour. So that's a huge advantage. But importantly, it's renewable power. So in the scheme of developing mines of the future, and I'm always looking, so what will this mine look like when it's developed, 8 or 10 years ahead? What will be the environment then? I think ultimately you will need to be on renewable power. You'll need to address the issue of carbon credits or the cost, potentially paying for the cost of that CO2 you're producing, which I think is going to be an impact to the mining industry as a whole. And a lot of the work we're doing at the moment is looking at something like Ikkari. Can it be a truly modern mine? Could it be potentially a zero emission or a net zero emission project of the future? Which again, you're looking for assets that are unique in the space and that are worthy of development. And ultimately, if you've got low cost and then you've got almost very, very low emissions that you would have out of this asset, makes it even more attractive and justifies its potential to be developed as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole. You go into that subject, it's a whole gamut, all the stakeholder engagement, community work. As you say, yes, it is ultimately trees and reindeers right now, but those reindeers are commercially farmed. We have a commercial relationship with the commercial reindeer herders, and we have a relationship with the person that's cutting the trees, the state forestry company, who's continually cutting all the trees, and because it is a commercial forestry environment, it's not a natural woodland. So, no.
Okay, your share price in the last 12, 14 months up 5-6 times. Everyone's delighted. Shareholders must be really, really pleased. The pressure doesn't stop on you. You've got to keep things moving. But there's this funny thing that happens in the market when you keep putting out high grade, consistent results. It almost becomes boring.
Yeah, I guess so. Manage it. Well, I often say to people, this job is really managing people's expectations and continually providing like updates and information and just making sure people have the information in front. I think, it's hard to top those sort of drill results that I mentioned before, but I think. I guess we just have to we will continue to demonstrate why this is a more exceptional opportunity than others, and why fundamentally it's these are very good assets, and good assets are very hard to come by in this sector. You've got a sector that struggles to replace its resources every year, and probably dwindling production in the future. I would say personally, I think that's going to be and I think importantly, an industry that is evolving or has evolved and continues to evolve into one that's more returns focused. They're all the large companies are paying significant dividends now. To maintain paying those sort of dividends in the future, which they're now getting rated on and people are owning the shares for, they have to have high margin assets with excess returns. Now, there aren't that many of those. So, ultimately to sustain those kind of businesses, they're going to be looking for assets like we're discovering. And that's, goes full circle. Why is our business set up like it is? To find exceptionally high return assets in exploration and commit a higher risk, more amount of money early on and potentially to higher risk to find those because they're hard to find in the first place. But ultimately the returns on, if you do find them, can be absolutely exceptional because they are recorded. There's an industry that's looking to replace, assets of that quality.
Right. Are we getting under the skin here a little bit? Are you giving us some clues as to how you're running this company because you know what the end game is? You recognize that this is not something that you're going to build out.
Well, I think it's the end game regardless of whether we develop it or someone else, because I have no intention of developing a marginal gold mine. If Rupert Resources goes on to be a production company, I would expect it to be, only have high margin assets, because ultimately, otherwise it won't be able to pay dividends. It won't be able to compete for capital in the sector. And ultimately, it's the cost of capital, isn't it? The cost of raise money is so important in these businesses. So, if we want to develop Hickory ourselves, so if we want to move that forward ourselves, we need to demonstrate that it is a very high return, short payback asset, environmentally, very, in terms of its emission quality and exceptional there, that you can develop it and it's going to generate a very good return for all the stakeholders. Obviously, Finland's a great country to operate because it has, stable tax jurisdiction or tax regime, things like that. It's quite relatively simple to navigate that side. But you still, if we're going to raise money to do that or use debt finance to do that in the future, you don't want to be paying top whack for that money. You don't want it to cost you a fortune, because otherwise that'll kill the returns on the project. So you're sort of saying, so either way, I guess either way we set out at the beginning to find exceptional assets, because whether we build them or someone else acquires them, you've got to give people a reason to invest in them. Either they're investing them through buying Rupert Resources effectively, those companies, or you're getting investors to put new money in, or a bank to lend you money to invest in that project as well. It all requires good assets, doesn't it?
It does, and you've got a bunch of cash now, but explorers are always going to be cash constrained at various points, and it's why I'm digging a bit on this and trying to get at what you're at is because I sort of joke about the fact that consistent high grade drill results over big intervals, it kind of gets a bit boring because people get a bit blasé, which is good for you because it means you kind of prove a point to people and go, they know that it's there. And hopefully if you continue to do what you say, there'll be more of the same. But at the same time, they want to know, well, what are you going to do? What's the plan here, guys? And, if there's an end, and you're going to come back and say it's a moving feast, and we've got to assess the.
No, I'm not going to say it's a moving. No, I'm not going to say it's a moving feast. I think it's the right question for everyone to ask and it probably comes out to it's a little bit early for me to give you all the answers because we haven't done the first resource. So give me a few months to get that done, and then give me 6 months after that to get some sort of PEA style study out. And so you can see some economics. We're on the third round of metallurgy on this now. We've done 2 years of environmental baseline work. All that work is going on. This isn't just an exploration company drilling holes. This has all the gambit of everything else you need to de-risk asset is going on in the background. So, over the next 12 months, there'll be a huge amount of information on Ickery out in the market that allow people to, analysts to put more numbers on it and the investors to really wrap their heads around it. And so it will move on relatively as quickly as we've been discovering things, we're going to move it forward. So people shouldn't be thinking, oh, what are they're just going to sit there and wait for this to be bought out. That is not our business plan. That is not a business plan that I would ever subscribe to. Our job is to move this asset forward. We have the skill base in the company, so why wouldn't we? And we can, we'll recruit other people in as needed to do that. But our plan is to push on as fast as possible.
Okay, well let's go the flip side here, because isn't there a danger when you kind of put that stake in the sand that people judge you by that? So do you have to talk the language of interim PEA, or this is project 1 out of 8 discoveries? There's a narrative that you've got to try and control.
I guess, and it is, and so we have to control that narrative, and we will continue to attempt to control that narrative in the best possible way. But the only best possible way we can do that is to continue to generate new information and provide it out there and keep it coming in a regular fashion. So people will, when the new resource comes out, they'll see that, but also see all right, this is the more drilling that's going on around it. So then we go on to that, and then we'll do a PEA first, because you can encompass all the results into that, start wrapping heads around that. And then by the time we get to pre-feasibility study, it may well look very different. There may be many other resources coming into it beyond Ickery at that point in time. But that's why we've engaged people so early in the process, both speaking to stakeholders in Finland, as in permitting stakeholders now, not waiting until everything's wrapped in a nice bow with a nice PFS around it. Well, that's great, but that's only a moment in time, and it's already out of date by the time you guys get to read it anyway. I mean, it's that, and for me, the testers, people never audit back to PEAs or PFSs or even feasibility studies, and that is a real issue for me, because it is just a moment. It's a snapshot in time of a project's development. We will provide those snapshots, but ultimately it's an evolutionary process, and people will also provide the information for people to think a bit beyond those studies as well.
Okay. The reason I kind of come up from both sides is because, we can give people, or you could give people exactly the same data, and you'll have polar opposite views, right? So I think it's always worth, or you should be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I could give consultants, and obviously you use independent consultants to write PFPs. If you get, 3 of them, 3 bits of all the same data, they'll all come up with 3 different opportunities for you. So I think the difference being here is that you are working with people, certainly myself and others in the team, that have read hundreds of PEAs and PFSs and looked at them from the outside, and we evaluated lots and lots, thousands of projects, ultimately, well, at least 1,000 projects in my case, and modeled them. So you know what you're looking for, you know what the elements are, and it's just about those key elements and crystallizing those for investors. And again, why am I doing the resource now? Because I ultimately want to be able to sit down with investors and sort of demystify this whole business of resources and costs and just say, okay, well, this is the amount of, we'll produce this margin on every ounce that we produce. This is the sort of margins. This is the cost base. This is the margin. This is the sort of investment returns, that this asset has. and then they can almost take it through to like a forward price cash flow multiple. What would be better than being able to do that? I mean, you don't have to. It's so complicated, geology and resources and mining, but let's crystallize it down to things that people can compare to other industries. Why should I invest in, Rupert Resources, exploration or R&D company in mining versus R&D company in the other sector? That's kind of where we're ultimately going.
What's next out of the block? What should we be looking for?
Well, the resource is obviously the main thing. I think people are sort of hanging on for that. So that's August, but there will be some other exploration results between now and then. So just on the financing. So just we've got our annuals to come out and things like that. So yeah, I'd say, but between now and in the next 6 weeks, we'll get some more exploration results out as well.
Okay, James. Well, we'll look out for those and stay in touch, please. Very keen to follow this story this year and see where it goes.
Okay. Well, thanks, Matt. Much appreciated.